Yeah. Crazy part. They're not really. We do have a quorum. Don't do that. Commissioner Louise is sick and Commissioners Coppenol and Dewan are out. So we'll proceed as we are. First item on the agenda is approval of the agenda. Do I hear any changes? If not, then I'd like a motion to approve as written.
Motion to approve as distributed.
Support.
We have both discussion. If not, call the question. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Not. Next thing is going through the minutes from the last meeting, which was a very short meeting, so are the minutes. Any corrections?
I didn't see anything needing correction.
Okay, nothing. Then the motion would be appropriate to approve.
A motion to approve the minutes from our last meeting as presented.
Support.
Thank you. And all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. The next section on the meeting is public comment. For those who haven't been here before, we do have a couple of public hearings coming up, and if you're here to address one of those items, please hold your comments until that, because you'll have an opportunity to speak. The public hearing is open to say whatever you want to that concerns the township. You get a couple of minutes to speak. We'll need your name and address. And there's a sheet. Is there a sheet on the? There's a sheet up there. Okay. So it just so you know, this is in neither case is it a discussion period where it's a question and answer. This is your opportunity to state your concerns or ideas. It's not something where we can get into a question and answer, because we did that with everybody. There are some meetings where we've had like 3 hours of comments. And if we had a discussion on each one, it's not doable. But anyway, if you're interested, let me know. Anybody on this side? If not, and anybody on this side? Yes.
You want us just to state the things that we're opposed to or for?
Both, either.
Yes, that's what I mean, either or.
Yes.
But that's all we do today.
And you can comment on why, et cetera, what your reasoning is, so on. But if there's nobody for just the open public comment period, then we'll proceed to the next item.
Can I say something?
Sure. Come on up to the mic and get your name and address on there.
This wasn't prepared by me, but I'm the presenter. Okay, my name is Doug Young. My wife and I own one of the Twin Oaks condos adjacent to.
If I could take a timeout, is this regarding one of the items on here, like the rezoning request?
Yeah, for Bovan.
Then please hold on until we get to that subject.
Okay,
But your name's already there, so that's good.
all right. It's the first mistake I made.
Okay. Next item on the agenda is the rezoning request.
Do you need to close public comment?
Hmm?
Do you need to close public comment?
Yes. Public comment is closed. We don't need a vote on that. Thank you.
Okay.
Mika, would you introduce this rezoning request, please?
Yes, indeed. So this is a rezoning request for 3453 North 144th Avenue. There is a small map in your agenda packet, and the larger map, of course, is over there. I can point that out in just a moment where this is located. So this is on 144th and Butternut, or just off of there on the northwest corner. It's a parcel that currently has split zoning. It's partially ag and partially R3, low density, single family residential. The request is to rezone it to R4, which is medium density, 1 is 2 family. This is in the future land use map for high density residential, which translates to R5. That would be the low density multifamily district, which is kind of like R4 plus multifamily as well. So that is, the request is not for the R5, the request is for the R4, but the R5 is what's permitted under the future land use map. Would you like me to show on the map where this
Yes, please.
is? So on this map, future land use map is right here. 124, this Butternut, family fair is over here. And that's right here. on this map, Holland Charter Township.
That's, the map on the right is current zoning.
And then future land use
The-
maps breakdown.
So just to explain, we are required by law, we come up with a master plan every 5 years, planning what we intend to the township to be like in the next 20, 30 years. And as part of that, we do a future land use map. This is what our plan is to go to that eventually. So that's the map on the left, and this item, this land has been zoned for high density residential. In the future land use map, it currently is not that, but this request is to go to not the high land use, but the next step below that. Just so you understand the process. How many people per area? So Mika, if you're ready. And we can have a little discussion and then we'll have a presentation by the applicant. So any questions from the board to start with?
One other comment, I
Clarification.
apologize, because I know not everyone knows the process. This is a recommendation by the planning commission that's then finally approved by the township board or tonight. Finally
Right.
decided by the township board.
Right, we review it, make a recommendation, the board is the final review and decision on it.
Mr. Chairman, if I understand you correctly, in our visioning for the master plan, we identified this area as a potential location for R4,
For R5, actually.
R5 actually.
Yeah.
Okay, so a lot of thought has gone into what we foresee for the future for this area.
Yeah.
Okay,
And if I recall the discussions, it's because there's the school there, there's already some high density or medium in the area.
Yes, medium density, and then there are utilities that are in the area as well.
Yeah, utilities meaning sewer and water
Correct.
and grocery store and et cetera.
thank you.
If nothing else, could we have the applicant come up, please?
Good evening, everyone. My name is Chuck Hoyt. I'm from Naderveld, and I'm here representing the applicant is Balvan. And that's actually Bauman Building, which is an applicant that you've seen several times before, and you'll see again later on tonight. So yeah, the request tonight is for the property that's being applied for to be rezoned to the R4 zone district. It is currently agricultural, and as noted in the planner's report, there's really no agricultural use that's really being sort of used in the immediate area or certainly on this site. So the applicant, they're a residential builder. They would like to rezone this site that is more applicable to what their proposed use is, but really what meets well with the master plan. So, you know, again, just a couple of things to point out in the report. It's noted that it aligns well with the existing residential zoning of R3 and R4 adjacent to the nearby parcel, adjacent to the parcel. So again, nearby uses are going to be something that are compatible, and this use is going to be compatible with those nearby uses, and that's noted within the planner's report. It's also noted that it supports goal 5, which is the promotion of a variety of attainable housing types. You know, again, I think the Bauman Building team is able to bring a quality housing product and a variety of housing type that is supportive of goal number 5. And as noted as well, you guys talked a little bit about it already. It's adjacent to a commercial district that is on what we'll call a primary roadway. So this site seems kind of aligned well for the proposed type of use that the client would want to do. So tonight we ask for you to recommend rezoning to the township board consistent with the master plan. And we're here to answer any questions that you have tonight.
Okay, super. So he's here, we can ask questions if you have any. I do have a question, just to start it off. What are your concept? I know once we rezone, you can do anything that's within the legal limits. but what is your concept for what you want to build there?
Residential. It's residential homes for sure. I don't know if I can describe too much more.
Single family or double duplexes?
Well, it's whatever what the R4 would allow, but certainly, attached single family housing product is something that this builder is interested in doing and very likely could do on this site.
Yeah. And do you have an idea how many you might fit on the site? How many homes?
There are some challenges with the site, it just in terms of, how we're able to design it. What I'll say is they'll, try to maximize the number on the site. The number that they'll end up with is something that is allowable within the use. I don't know that the PUD or anything would be applied for. It's possible, but
You're not planning a PUD at this point.
not necessarily, but it's on the table.
Could-
Anything is, yeah.
Okay.
He's concerned. What did you say? The what?
It's there's an item called a PUD, which is a planned unit development, which is kind of its own zoning without going into details. And this is not normally a thing for discussion, but I want you to understand what's going on. We can go around some of the normal rules by like clustering housing and then leaving large pieces of land open so that those don't have houses on them, that might just stay woods or something. Okay, so it's different than just a subdivision.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
I've got a question. It's maybe just for our board as opposed to you with regard to rezoning. I'm going to make the assumption that there won't be any modifications to the land. Are they eligible to do that? I'm forward thinking in that until they present a plan of development, no trees should be removed at all.
Yes, well, we have a tree ordinance that details what to do about stands of trees and that you're not allowed to remove them. I don't remember all the details on that.
Right, and I didn't know if it wrapped into a zoning change, if that changed any of the rules or not.
I don't believe that the zoning change triggers anything different with regard to the tree preservation ordinance.
Okay, thank you.
It does not. But we didn't, when we wrote that, we did not address different zoning districts, so it applies across.
Across the board, perfect, thank you.
And the exit, just looking at the map, it's quite obvious, is on to 144th. There are three places it looks like where you can get to 144th.
Right now, there's one existing driveway, correct?
Right, but I think there are three places, am I right, Mika, where the property
Yeah,
gets to one?
Yes, there's frontage along 144th in three different locations.
There'll
Correct.
probably be some kind of circular drive going through.
Yeah, I mean, that would be the idea, right? That's probably the best way to design it. Yep.
Yep. Okay. Any other questions?
And when you say a circular drive, potentially they're going to be going through the yards between two homes?
Yeah, I don't know. We'll see
Okay.
what the plan comes up with. Maybe it'll be a single.
Perfect, thank you.
entrance that we'll have to see. The big question here, just to remind everybody, is that this is a rezoning request and there is no specific plan at this point. It's just rezoning, and then if they get their rezoning, then they can start planning.
That's correct.
Any other questions? Okay, thank you. I have one other comment which people should know is that when there is a development, the same trees ordinance requires a buffer on the whole perimeter of the development.
Okay.
Tree buffer. So that will be included, and we'll talk about that some more tonight. Different subject. Okay, if there are no other questions, then I'll open the public comment period. And as I said, about 3 minutes each, and feel free to come up and say what you want. So why don't you go ahead since you.
Mr. Chair,
Yep.
there was one thing I just wanted to mention. I had indicated to one or two people on the phone is that if they had questions for the applicant, that anything should be directed to the
Oh.
chair. And that.
Thank you.
So,
Yes, just to clarify, sometimes these meetings get a little testy, not that I expect that here, but in order to keep things control, comments come to me, please.
I guess answered part of the question. You talked about a tree buffer around the perimeter.
Yep.
That was one thing I was going to say. I was just gonna see if they could maybe put up some trees. Cause our condo doesn't have very much as far as a buffer goes, but it sounds like he has to do that anyway. And as far as duplexes go, a duplex would be, you're talking about something that's owned by a person, they rent out both sides?
Conceivably, yes, or they live in one side and rent out the
Yeah.
other side.
Because I know the Twin Oaks condominiums were called duplexes, but they're not because we each own our separate unit or half of that unit. So I just wondered if they're going to be putting in duplexes or condominiums, and I heard you say single homes. But I don't know, is it going to be actually duplex? Because it'd be nice if there were condos, because condos have rules and you have to keep everything just right with your HOA.
So just to clarify again for everybody here, this is simply a rezoning request. There is no application at this moment and no plan as to what they're going to put in.
Oh, so we'll come back
So
at a
I can't
later
answer, there'll
date.
be another chance. Yes,
Okay, a later date.
yes,
All righty.
thank you.
Okay.
Somebody else on this side?
I'm a bit confused about rezoning without a plan. If we don't know what the plan is, how can we object or be for the rezoning?
Second mistake I made.
I'm sorry, and my name is Sally Starr, 14522 Twin Oaks. If they're going to be condos, perhaps we wouldn't object. But we don't know what they're going to be. We don't know what the plan is. We don't know the landscape plan. We don't know what the buffer will be. Will they be tall trees? Will they be just small trees? Will that suffice as a buffer? Not for years. So those are the objections that I think many of us who will back up to that property have. And my objection is that we will lose our wildlife, we will lose the trees back there, the woods. There just isn't much of that left anymore anywhere except the parks. But that the birds come, the rabbits, the deer, the turkeys, we can see them all from our back decks. And then of course there is that drain there. So I do know that there is some land between where we are and where they will build. But had you suggested, Chairman, that leaving some of the property without building on it may be a possibility. But it is very difficult for us to imagine if we don't know what's going to go in that on that property. And it's a funny shape. And other things that I had written an email. I don't know if you all got that email.
Yeah, they're in the record.
All right. Okay. Additional noise is a problem for myself. And the building noise, the additional traffic on 144th. There is no light on the corner of 144th and Butternut. And when the school gets out, the high school, the traffic is terrible. And I just saw an accident there yesterday, right on the intersection. So that's a concern. The traffic for, I don't know how many, we don't know how many are going to go in there, but there's at least 2 people usually for each residence. And so, and usually 2 cars. So that will be significant, a significant raise in noise, congestion, pollution, and just overall traffic. And speaking of pollution, taking trees down, trees are our lifeblood. We breathe from the trees. And if I'm not naive that I don't think this is going to go through, no one buys that piece of property without a thought that it would probably be rezoned in their favor. But I would like to say that if it does go through and building happens there, that we could save as many trees as possible. And that's about all I have to say.
Right. Thank you.
you.
Did you get your name written there?
I'm sorry. Yeah, I'm getting a pen.
Okay,
Thank you.
anybody else on this side of the room? If not, I'll go over here and let's start, we'll start in the back row. That's fine.
Hello, Chairman Board. My name is Sarah Westenbrock, and I reside at 3438 Butternut Drive with my husband Ryan and our three kids, Caitlin, Taylor, and Austin. Taylor has joined us today. And we certainly have some concerns. We love that property. We have been living adjacent to it for 15 years. Our daughter was very close to the owners that were there. She worked those horse barns for 3 years. We've helped adopt the donkey that was living there, and he lives at our friend's house now. We're very involved with the family. We love the property. We walk it daily, including our property that goes along the back of the drain system. So we are very invested and we love that property. So we have a couple of concerns with making it a higher density. The first one, which she already mentioned, is traffic. It is terrible. We see a lot of accidents at that intersection. With the family fair there's a lot of traffic coming and going. We're concerned about the addition of traffic. Will that mean we're doing wider lanes, which will look a lot different than our township looks now there? So certainly traffic is one of the ways it's a mess. Like she mentioned, there's accidents there all the time. Will there be lights installed? Will that look different when schools are going in session, like starting in the morning or when they're getting out in the afternoon? Because we live at 3438, which is a long ways up, but the traffic backs up past our house at that moment. And I imagine it does down 144th as well. So traffic is certainly one of our biggest concerns with rezoning. If you add 2 people per condo, and we've already met with Bauman and kind of discussed, and we kind of have an idea of what this plan is going to look like, but you're still adding hundreds of vehicles to this intersection. So that's one of our concerns. Another concern is about the actual process when they do any sort of building there with the rezoning. One of our biggest concerns is what's going to happen to the water table with dewatering. We've spent over the last 4 years, thousands and thousands of dollars in our yard alone, putting in underground sprinkling, putting down a well, reseeding our entire grass. We don't want there to be a dewatering process where they're putting in a pond or utilities or anything, and then all of a sudden all the wells in the area dry up. So we're kind of concerned about what that may look like during the process of building, much less concerned for the noise for the year or 2 or 3 that it takes to make these construct high density properties, whether they're condos or townhouses or whatever they're called. We're quite concerned about the year or 2 or however long of the construction and the taking down of trees and the noise level. One other concern we have is about the wildlife. The man that lived there before fed the deer every night. He loved deer. We have 2 owls on that property that we've named Olive and Owen, and we see them often. My husband and I were walking on Sunday and we saw Olive or Owen. I can't tell them apart. We could see them on the property, and they love those trees. They nest in those trees. They are there all the time. And so we're quite concerned about the nature. The deer that used to cross back and forth on our property, there's a 3-legged deer that's been there for years. I don't know if she's around still, but that property is loved by the animals in our community. So the owls, the deer, we're worried about what's going to happen to that community of wildlife. And then the trees. The trees are amazing, and there's not a lot of places you can go and have trees that close. So we're certainly concerned about the ability to take down the trees and how much green space will be left on that property by the time the high zoning project has commenced. So Those are our biggest concerns. And of course, there's always the things with it besides noise, like are there going to be street lights now that we have glaring into our houses, that type of thing. So I appreciate your time and for your considerations. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else on this side? Want to?
Hey, my name is Ryan Westbrook. I'm Sarah's husband. Anyways, we've been living there a long time. I've been in the housing industry my whole working career too. So I know that people need houses, people need places to live. And guys need jobs building them, whether it be anywhere from the roofers to the drywallers to insulators, everybody. It really, it's a far reaching, business. And a lot of guys provide a lot of meals for a lot of families that way. I just feel that there's houses that can be built anywheres. You got a lot of farm field, a lot of blueberries that aren't going to be used because of the blueberry prices, this and that. There's a lot of great places to build a lot of houses in quite a density. But right here, with the trees and the property as it is and the congestion already, I think that this property could maybe be better used for something special rather than just a bunch of houses. Like I said, you got a lot of farm fields, you got a lot of places that this stuff can go. Right here, we have an opportunity to do something neat. We got a bunch of trees, we got some woods, we got some acreage. I think it could be better used as maybe not a higher density, but maybe a lower density. Maybe, a few houses would be more than what we'd want to do, where we have some more trees and everybody gets kind of compromised. I mean, Bauman Builders, they need to make a living building houses, and they didn't buy this property not to have a return on it. That's understandable, but maybe with Cal's legacy being a horse person, a nature person, and the barns and the fields that they have there, I think we should think about what we can do with this as a special piece rather than how we can just turn it into more housing. There's, like I said, there's always a lot of fight fields, other places where, hey, maybe some of that sort of stuff can go, but this is unique. There's not a lot of places like this around here, especially on the north side, being so close to all sorts of neat stuff they can get to. So I think consideration should be taken before things are granted. That's all. So
Thank you.
Anyway, thank you very much.
Anybody else along here? Next row in front. Would you like to speak?
I'm Mary Lou Palafis. We live at 14534.
Could you tip the mic down to you a little bit, please?
Sorry. Is that better?
Yes, I can hear a little better now.
Okay. We heard a rumor today that there was going to be a roundabout put on Butternut and 144th. Do you know anything about that?
It's a new one to me.
There may be talk, there's no plan.
There's some talk, but nothing.
No
more than
plans yet. Okay, that's what I wanted. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else? Okay, if not, I'll take a motion to close the public hearing.
So moved.
Okay. The discussion, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Okay. I'd like to go through some of these items that were raised. Mika, and you'll be able to help out as far as the traffic and a traffic light at 144th and Butternut. That's the road commission's decision, correct?
It is, and I think it's a fair question. It's a good question. I'm familiar with how that area backs up. I've been out there at that time of day, just kind of checking stuff out for different things when we were looking at the master plan specifically. I will say that that's something that the road commission does keep a close eye on. I can't say what direction they would go on that, and they haven't made any indication to me they're considering. I would expect that there would likely be some kind of traffic study as part of this. I can't say that for sure, but I think that that's likely, and that they would be evaluating traffic volumes in connection with that.
Okay.
I did also, we have a technical review committee that meets monthly. This is something that's pretty new. And I brought this just as the rezoning to that committee. And so there have been eyes on it as well. And so, anybody who's making decisions on that is at least aware of the project that's going on, so it's under consideration.
Okay. There's a lot of concern, having just gone through the master plan where we surveyed the community on what's important to the community and what's not. One of the main things that comes up is trees, not surprisingly, and we've seen that here tonight. And we do have an ordinance, and it certainly is something that comes up when there are developments. So we'll see how that goes. It's hard to have a plan before you know whether you have the rezoning. Why spend the money if you don't get it? So it's kind of a chicken and egg thing on that, but you will have an opportunity when we do get the plan to comment also. So this is not the end of your ability to comment. And beyond that, if it gets to the planning commission, it still goes to the board. So there's another opportunity.
At first, you accept the rezoning, then the plan comes in. So this is our chance to say we don't want it, if we don't, but then it's a done deal.
No, that's close. But as far as the zoning goes, this board recommends to this planning commission recommends to the township board to rezone it. The township board makes the final decision.
Okay.
And Shar here, for instance, is a member of the planning commission from the board, so she hears this whole discussion, and when they have a discussion, she can help fill in where there might be some holes.
Yep.
Could I just have that map clarified? I don't understand what the brown is.
Yes.
That's
Normally we don't have a discussion at this point, a question and answer period, but I do think it's important that the public understand what's going on. So Mika, if you could do a quick explanation.
So this is the land use map. This is what came out of the master planning process. Most of this was unchanged, but up here in this area, this is what's called a high density residential plan designation. And so the high density residential is up to multifamily housing in that area. And then this over here, this is lower density residential, and this is a large lot residential over here with an agricultural area shown in green there.
Where is Twin Oaks on there in Butternut Drive?
Let's see, this is Butternut. This is Butternut Drive.
Division's the edge. Yeah.
So that is not yet high density.
Oh, I'm sorry. I was looking too low. This is Twin Oaks right here. And this right here is agricultural. No, the way that it is right now, I'm sorry, high density. The way it is right now is, where are we in this one? Right here. This right here. So this is Twin Oaks right here on that one. And that's already the zoning that's being requested tonight. And then this here is the zone is agricultural with this as the lower density residential. That's for the current zone.
So the master plan is to make that brown area all high density.
Higher density.
Where?
Okay. Carrying on, we do also, when there are developments, if there's big stands of trees, we'll make the developer identify the trees individually, every tree above some size. And then we push to maintain as many of those trees as possible. And a little editorial, we did have a development on Riley, south side of Riley, west of 152nd, where there were a bunch of trees, long story. A lot of them were taken down and it made me sick. So anyway, trees are important. Again, we just went through the master plan. Trees are a big deal here. Agricultural is a big deal. Everybody wants to support agriculture, especially blueberries. From what we were told by MSU Ag, to make a short story, Park Township is the best place in the United States to grow blueberries. So that's something to consider. There are a lot of good places, but it's Ottawa County and specifically Park Township. So a lot of the public wants to keep blueberries. That's why there's a push it's a good comment, but not put housing in blueberry fields. Mika, did you do any kind of calculation on this to see what the maximum number of housing units would be?
I didn't, and I can take a quick look at that.
Okay.
But I would say that the site will not be able to support the maximum number that would be permitted by zoning because of other issues on the site as far as like, there's a drain that goes through there, tree preservation, there's a lot kind of going on in that area,
Right.
so.
Okay. There was a question about water table, and we're always very careful on water table, especially if we're near blueberries, to do it when it's not in the watering season, you know, when it's dry season, and control it. And I don't see that there's anything that would go on here that would change the water table significantly.
That is something that our engineers have already taken at least a quick look at, and so
Yep.
that's something we'll be keeping an eye on, and if there's anything that needs to happen there, that will be required.
Okay. And there was a question about lights. We also have a lighting ordinance, and all of our lights are supposed to be dark sky approved. They all shine down, and none of the light should come from the element off the property. So there will be some lights, but they're not going to be, you know, the old fashioned ones that shine everywhere. They will shine only down. Did I miss something? Oh, there was a question about PUD and about preserving trees and so on, and we're going to address this one. This is the next item on the agenda, but it was a big piece of property, northwest corner of 160th and James. There are a bunch of trees on the north. The property backs against the Riley Trails, and so part of it doing the PUD, you asked what that was. We give them some breaks, they give us something back. In this case, they're deeding some of the land to Riley Trails for public use, and including a bunch of the woods. So to me, that's a big gain for the public. That's the kind of thing we can work on as the development goes on. I think I answered the questions that I have from the audience. Other comments, questions?
Mr. Chair, if I may?
Yes.
Just to drive my point home from earlier on the trees, I hope the development, if that is to happen, really takes note of all the comments tonight from our residents and our ordinance on trees. You alluded to the one parcel of property that before even planning came before the board that they started removing trees and bulldozing dunes and actually changed quite a bit of the structure before even putting forth a site plan. So that would be one way to really make the township mad if that was to happen again. Did I say that politely enough?
I think that was
Okay.
pretty clear.
Thank you.
So I think we're at a point. One other thing that I might just, again, educational, if in our future land use map, there is it's designated as a different kind of zoning, then the only question is if a developer comes in and says, I want to rezone it, we pretty much have to, unless there's some reason to say, yeah, it's not time yet. We got to wait 5 years until some other development comes on. And then, you know, if this all gets developed, then you can do this, but you can't do this till we do this or something along those lines. But legally, we don't have a lot to stand on at this point. It's been the plan. They're coming in saying, now's the time. And there's other zoning like that already around it. So anyway, at this point, I'd like a motion, and then we can have further discussion if we so choose. And this would be a motion to recommend approval to the board, and then we can vote it up or down.
I'd like to make a motion that we recommend this go before the board for their viewing, in that the master plan does indicate that this whole entire area in question is planned for rezoning. I think that it's most appropriate to do that at this point. Per your comment earlier, there was nothing to prevent it. So that's my motion.
Okay,
Support.
Thank you. Any further discussion? If not, I'll call the question. Let's do a roll call just to be sure.
Certainly. Yes, please.
Dennis,
Yes.
Stephanie,
Yes.
and the chair votes yes. So our recommendation to the board passes. Thank you. And thank you all for coming. It may not seem like, but we appreciate when the public comes in, and people here are always good about coming in, behaving well, and giving us things to think about. So thank you. At this point, we're going to move on to the next item in the agenda, which is the Trailview site. If you want to stick around, you're welcome to. If you're all going to take off, I'm going to take a couple minutes while you make your way out.
I don't. Yeah, you go to the website. Thank you.
So this is.
Hopefully they'll do it. I would like to talk to you.
Thank you. Okay, procedural issue. We have the public hearing. I think we left it open at the end of the last meeting. Yes, it says public hearing continuation.
Yes, you did leave it open at the end of the last meeting.
Okay.
And I should mention that this is the preliminary review. I made an assumption without double checking the ordinance, so it didn't actually need a public hearing for the preliminary. So I apologies for that.
Okay. Yes. So since we had a public hearing open, going to ask if anybody wants to speak at the public hearing. Thank you. I don't think so. He's got it. Super. So at this point, I'd like a motion to close the public hearing.
So.
Thank you.
Support.
All right, all in favor?
All right.
All right. Now, Mika, if you could reintroduce this.
All right, this is the Trailview Site Condominium Planned Unit Development. This is the preliminary PD review. Next comes the final review, which is followed by the Township Board review. And if procedurally, I'll just mention this ahead of time. If you would like to go ahead at the end of this meeting, we can notice it for the next meeting. We would do that right away for the final PUD. So, but I want to know that you were feeling comfortable with that. This is in the R1 Real Estates Residential District. It's a clustered development. So, although the minimum lot size in the area is 2 acres, this is going to be closer together with a large area of open space, which is actually going to be turned over to Ottawa County Parks to be an extension of Right of the Trails. I've gone through all of the open space calculations and the density calculations. They've made some adjustments to the plans to accommodate. There's a very, very small area of wetland. They've made accommodations so there won't be any grading done in that area. And have added some fencing along the sides of the path that would be going back towards Riley Trails. So the resubmittal was, I think, very responsive to the requests that came from the Planning Commission in conversations with staff as well. The only 2 items I think that may need some clarification yet, or just request from the Planning Commission to say, where do you land with this? are the buffer on the west side of the property and then on the south side of the property along the street. So the south side of the property, one of the things that we had discussed, and I think it was discussed here, I know that we had discussed it with the chair and vice chair, was that this is currently along the street, that buffer is part of the parcels as opposed to being a separate, owned separately. It is intended to be maintained by the neighborhood. So that's something that was clarified in this recent bill. Along the west side, there's a lot of existing scrub trees there. A lot of those are in the ditch. And it's not a county drain. We did a little bit more digging, so that's not a county drain that would be cleared. But they are located in the ditch. And so whether that's adequate for a buffer or whether you want to see something additional there, I think that's a question to discuss. Other than that, they have met all the requirements and trying to think what else there was. There was some soil borings and that sort of thing submitted as well. So engineering has been happy with this plan too.
Chairman, if I may ask,
Yes.
make a couple questions. So, you mentioned a ditch. Is it on any county maps or is it named?
It's not named.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
Do you know something about naming ditches that,
I do.
Okay.
If it's named, you can't do anything with it.
Huh.
And if there's contaminants there and it's on your property, you are the one responsible for cleaning it.
there you go. One question, that ditch, is that a property, is the property line down the center of the ditch or where is the ditch?
I think the property line, that might be a little bit finer grained than I know. The applicant may be able to answer that.
Okay,
It's pretty close to right along the property line, but I can't say exactly where that is.
all right, Chuck.
All right, back again.
Hi.
Hi. It cleared out a little bit. Thank you for doing that, by the way. A lot of folks just don't know that they're able to take off after their item. They want to be polite and sit around. So I'm glad that you did that.
Yeah.
It would be a little distracting to have them here. So trail view, right? We're back again. Just as a recap of kind of where we were a while ago to where we are now. We actually did a rezone on this property back in 2022. And then, based on that rezone, getting it into the residential from agricultural to the residential zoning that it is now. We attended a pre-application conference with planning staff in December of 2023. And then, of course, we came to a pre-application conference to this body in January of 2024. At the time, it was called Legacy Acres. And we presented. And, if you recall that plan, it's very, very similar to what you see now. There really isn't a whole lot of changes at all if you were to just kind of look at a high level, right? So it's the basic same concept. The layout hasn't changed a ton. The number of units hasn't changed. So you've seen this plan for over a year now. The big thing that changed, of course, was in the discussion at that pre-application conference, there was a lot of discussion about the park to the north, right? And we talked a little bit about this last time, but just as a recap, or for those who may have not been here, the idea was there's Riley Trails to the north. And that's a valued asset, is a valued amenity for the community, and how that was going to interact with this project. So long story short, there were discussions between the applicant and Ottawa County Parks about how that property was going to be handled. And so from January 2024 to March of 2024, we had been, thinking about revisions to the plan and responding to comments that were made. And ultimately, there was an application that was put in for the PUD, right? The official PUD application was submitted in March of 2024. But from March of 2024 to November, there were discussions with the Parks Department and as well as planning staff of how to really handle how this is going to work, right? There's density calculations for the PUD and how that's all going to work. So there was some time taken because it got a little complicated, but ultimately the point is the applicant listened, okay, and responded to what we'll say are the significant concerns from the Planning Commission at the time in January of 24, which is what's going to happen with the park and with the trees, frankly, right? There's a big stand of trees that are to the north of at the northern end of this property that is going to be deeded to the park. So we feel like that was an improvement to the design. We think that that's a win-win and something that the Planning Commission should be proud of, as well as the applicant, because it kind of just shows how this process is supposed to work, right? We have an improved plan. I think that the residents, when they buy there, are going to appreciate what it is. That was at the directive of the Planning Commission. The Ottawa County Parks was willing to get on board. So kudos to everybody that I think we were able to obtain an improved plan. So, again, we resubmitted in November of 2024. What we understood as meeting the preliminary guidelines for a PUD, right? There's standards within the ordinance of what constitutes a preliminary application. We felt like we met that, and therefore the presentation in December of 2024, again, it was a public hearing that we were there for the preliminary discussion. Our understanding of how the PUD process is supposed to work is we present that preliminary plan, get feedback from the Planning Commission. There's no official approval of a preliminary plan that I understood or that I saw in the ordinance. It was simply do the preliminary presentation, receive feedback from the Planning Commission, and then proceed to final. And so that's what we understood as where we would be tonight. Because, we received comments at that December meeting, and Mika covered a lot of what we did. And I could go through it point by point, but I'll spare you all that stuff. But again, the most recent things we were asked to address was, first of all, that woodlands tree line buffer to remain, which is a note that has been on the print, but one of the changes that we made is we now have dimensioned it, right? So if you look at that western boundary, there's a dimension there, and same thing on the eastern side. It shows a dimension of what that buffer is that is to remain. One other note, there were areas of wetlands that showed that there was some potential grading. So if you look on units number 10 and 11, there's that very, very thin line, and I'm talking like a 2-foot wide strip of wetland that was identified in a preliminary wetland report. That is true. It was noticed, must have been by planning staff, that there was some grading that was happening there. What we've done in a revised plan that you should have in front of you is our grading no longer interacts. It doesn't disturb that area of wetland. You should know that lots 10 and 11 can accommodate a house in front of where that wetland would be. So not only is there no grading shown on the site plan, on the site design, but we don't think that any grading will disturb that wetland even when the house is being built. So that's the intent. Now, one caveat to that I will say is the wetland consultant believes that area of wetland may not be regulated, so it may fall into a different category. That remains to be seen, and we'll work with the wetland consultant and certainly any state agency that would regulate it for when the home is being built, if for whatever reason it needed to get pushed back. Certainly all the regulations were going to be held to those standards. But from a site plan standpoint, that grading has changed, and that should reflect in the plan set that you have. Mika noted the request to make that buffer part of the common area. We can't really do that because that really it impacts the lot widths to a certain extent where we would have to push further north into the park. And that just doesn't work well from a design standpoint. So she correctly noted that they are still on lots 1 and 20. But she also correctly noted that the maintenance and management of the landscaping that is proposed to be there, the buffer that's proposed to be along James Street, will be controlled by the Homeowners Association of Trailview. There will be an easement placed over top of that landscaping so that the homeowners of lots 1 and 20 can't go in and tear out that landscaping or make any adjustments to it at all. That is the control of the Homeowners Association of Trailview, who they'll have a copy of, if you,
That in here?
is that the master deed?
This says declaration of covenants and restrictions.
Yeah, so you're probably looking at an agreement with the adjacent property owners. I think that's what that document is.
Okay.
That's the one where they know that they are willing to accept a pond that is closer than the required 75 feet. I think that's the document you're looking at. It's going to be written into the master deed, right? Which is a legal document. It's a legal instrument. It'll be shown on the exhibit B of that master deed. So it will be a legal document. And of course, the association then will be bound by the approval from the Planning Commission that says you have to have a buffer along that area. So they're going to be responsible for if something dies, they're going to have to replant something there. And just practically, I'll be honest, I can't imagine that the homeowners on lots 1 and 20 will want to eliminate any of the trees there. They're probably going to like a little bit of the buffer there. Now, maybe we can talk about that very specifically. So that's the just the sort of legal aspect of the buffer along James Street. But the plan that you see is a little bit beefed up in terms of the number of plantings along James. We had it a little more sparse before, and there's been some additional plantings that are placed there now. We feel like that it's a good mix of you don't want necessarily this wall, a very opaque experience of plantings along a roadway like that, particularly into a neighborhood. It's not exactly the aesthetic that a neighborhood typically wants. You want a buffer there, by all means, you do, but a little bit of transparency, fenestration, as we would call it, right, where you can see through the trees a bit. You can see that there are homes there. You can recognize that it is a residential neighborhood, but you still have some substantial sort of buffering, we'll call it, to give it a nice aesthetic. So we think that plan that you see is appropriate for this site, and similar to some of the neighborhoods in the area. Although what I'll say is, this area is fairly unique along James Street because you've either got like blueberry farms, which were completely, devoid of sort of vertical trees, or you got like heavily wooded landscapes where neighborhoods or homes are set way back from the site, or you have single family homes that are, completely open to the road. So there's a pretty well a mix. And we feel like we've hit a happy medium with the density of plantings that we have along James Street for that buffer that we've provided. Just in general, right, we've acted in good faith to provide a development that, follows the township ordinance and the master plan. We're not going to be a nuisance to any of the neighboring properties, and we've gone through within the narrative to describe all of the efforts that have been undertaken and the specifics about water table and the pond being at a certain depth where it's not going to promote insect growth and things like that. So we went through a lot of that in the narrative, and we can go through it specifically tonight if you like. But we're providing quality housing in a desirable area. We know how much housing is needed. So the applicant's filling that void. We're utilizing the natural amenities that are given on this site. Again, I think it's a great plan because of the proximity and the walkability, frankly, to the to the trail to the north. And it provides a unique and desirable product. And it's been a unique plan and a unique process, which is the intent of the PUD, right? To create a better plan like this. So again, in summary, we were here tonight hoping for a final plan. And that's because of the process that we had sort of gone through so far. We feel like we had met the preliminary aspect of the plans, but certainly we needed to come with all of the other additional reports and all of the other information that was required for final. So we're here tonight to answer questions and hope for your approval. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Chuck. Questions?
I have a couple.
Good.
I've got notes written all over my pages, so excuse my ADD mess on my desk. So you spent quite a bit of time talking about lots 1 and 20 and the trees. Are you going to be putting a berm there too, or is it just trees and small shrub plantings? That's the lots along James Street.
Yeah, I don't think that there's any plan to berm that up. I think it's just trees.
I know I've got the floor, but I need to find my notes. With regard to the retention drainage pond, I know you're making it safer than what the guidelines ask for, but it's bordering homes to the east. Those individuals, they've been contacted, letting them know that there's going to be a pond in their, not their backyard, but their backyard.
Yeah, in fact, the document that the chair had up is the document that they executed, noting that they are approving the location of the pond being closer than the required 75 feet.
I know in
So-
your presentations, not from you, but me sit in the audience listening to others come forward. There was some property where I'm looking at a safety issue. If they've got children, they're going to wander. They're going to wander to the back. Is there any concern with putting up a fence, or is that going to be left up to the homeowners to fence in their yards?
Yeah, so a couple of things. If somebody does have a specific concern within their own house, by all means, they can put a fence up. We typically don't put fences around ponds. And there was even talked previously about like landscaping and things like that. Those homeowners have requested a view of the pond, right?
Okay.
That's an amenity for them. And yeah, I mean, as far as safety goes, again, we're talking a 1-on-7 slope. So in order for you to be 3 foot deep, you'd have to be 20 feet out into the pond. So any child wandering would have to really swim out 20 feet just to get nice. I mean,
Yeah, I'm thinking of my 2-year-old.
They'd have to work.
They only need 4 inches of water. They're not going to go up to the middle to drown. They can drown right at the end. That was my point.
Sure.
And not my 2-year-old, my 2-year-old grandson.
Okay, well.
That was one note. Another item, no trees are being planned to be removed from the Trailview site. Will you be adding any more, or you're just going to be leaving them as is? That's under the tree preservation section. And specifically, it says with regard to reforestation, requires 25% of the trees removed to be replaced. And you state that there's no plan to remove them, but will you ever be adding more? Or it's just going to be left as
Well,
is?
yeah, I mean, if you look at the landscape plan, so that's sheet L100.
Yeah.
There are 41
Additions?
trees planned to be planted. And again, so my understanding of the buffer section is it's within tree preservation, right? To
Yep.
preserve existing trees, right? So the note that you see on there is meant to indicate we're not coming in to cut down really any of these trees.
Perfect.
And the one thing I didn't really touch on, forgive me, just give me 1 second.
Now that seems to be what I'm driving home today for some reason, but
There was discussion last time about that western edge, right? And what we provided in our resubmittal is this exhibit here, which kind of gives you an
Yep,
indication of the buffer that's seen there. What we heard last time when we were here, kind of after, we'll say, a lengthy discussion, was ultimately that the board was, the commission, the planning commission was comfortable with the existing trees that are located on that western side. We just provided this exhibit just to kind of give it a little more indication. Last time I tried to grab the controls of the computer and show you. This time we just showed it in an exhibit. But again, the idea is there's a heavy tree canopy on that western side that we intend to use as a buffer. And we feel like we're meeting the intent of that section of the ordinance, which is tree preservation.
Yep, I
Now,
appreciate
again,
that.
that said, 41 more trees are going in on the site.
The other item I cannot find, it talked about sewer system going in with a 12-inch pipe, and I thought, what did we agree on for pipes going in, and it's not going to be exceeding a specific diameter, and especially north of James? I don't know how this plan comes into play, but I don't think we're going to 12-inch pipes.
Yeah, I was thinking it was 8.
Me
and
too.
so that, I don't remember looking at the sewer pipe size here, but that was, this was specifically put in as an allowance because this was already in progress during the master plan conversation, so.
And I think you and I had a conversation about that previously, so I understood that. It's just, I don't know how a 12-inch pipe is gonna made up and work or not work with our 8-inch.
Yeah, where was the 12-inch pipe?
Well-
I think that would probably be an error, and that would be something that would end up being resolved during engineering review. And
Okay.
Pre-construction.
Yeah,
I circled it and I can't find it in my mess of papers.
sheet 3, C300 on your plan set indicates an 8-inch sanitary pipe. So there's
Okay.
a proposed 8-inch. If it
So then
said 12-inch
It
anywhere
says
else,
12.
it'll get, that'll get all cleaned up, but
Okay.
you should know it's 8-inch proposed.
Perfect.
Yes.
I have no additional questions. I will say thank you. I will acknowledge when I did go through the revised plans, especially that front buffer, the addition of the fence, really taking our comments and questions from the previous meeting, and incorporating them was appreciated.
All right, and then I have one big question. I don't know why we haven't answered this in the past, is where is that ditch relative to the property line? Because my concern, and apparently it's not an Ottawa County ditch. So my big concern was, because remember were you around for the Park West drain?
Pardon me?
Were you around during the Park West drain thing? There was heavy rain, bunch of properties flooded. They taxed not the road commission, the water resources, taxed everybody, put in like a $7 million drain to keep the water down in areas up here where people shouldn't have built. But anyway, at the end of that, they said, oh, maybe we should be cleaning our drains. And then the water would flow better. So they clean drains, but then there's a whole lot of trees that grow in the drain. And my concern was this, if this is an Ottawa County drain, then they could come in at any minute and decide to clean it, and then those trees would all be gone. Or most of them at least would be gone. If it's not Ottawa County, then I guess I don't have as much fear of that. If it's on this property, then it's under the homeowner's control. But if it's on the property to the west, then it's not. I would like to know where that ditch actually is relative to the property line, because if there's a chance the trees will be taken out, then I think you need to put in some along that line.
So, Mr. Chair, I'm trying to navigate my way to the actual site right now. I have not gonna be big enough for you to see very well, but the Water Resource Commissioner has Drain Viewer online. And this is Riley Trails up here. This is the parcel right here, and there's no county drain.
Okay.
Right here. So, down here, we have some, collectors that are closed. There may be an open drain, a couple of parcels to the east along that road, but.
Right. Yeah, there's one to the
There's no-
east of 160th. I'm sure that's a county drain.
Yeah, but there's no county drain that's coming down through here.
So we're not afraid of the county at this
So the
point.
county would
Correct,
figure it out. That would be an individual property owner decision. So
Right.
my guess is that and this isn't a certainty, my guess is that that ditch is probably on the east side of the property line, only because I think that the property owner on the west has planted a line of evergreens in there. I would kind of think that that would be closer to the property line, but I can't swear to that.
Did you have a survey done?
Oh, yeah.
I would
of
think so.
course.
Okay, so that should tell us something.
Yeah, and we indicate on our plan set where where that drain is. I would say if anything, it's on the western side of, now, our survey isn't necessarily going to pick up all the trees, but it does indicate the buffer that is there, and there's a where's my landscape sheet? I think the landscape sheet is the best one to look at. Yeah.
But L100. It's the last one in that big tag. L for last. It looks like it's outside.
So you can see that drainage, that creek, you see it kind of meandering?
Yeah.
Well, I don't see it at all east of the property line at all.
Right.
I see it on the west side.
So that means it's under control of the farmer, whoever owns the property to the west.
So if anybody's clearing that thing out, they're clearing it off of this property. So the tree buffer will remain that full 25 feet, 23 feet worth of tree buffer will remain on our site, because they're not going to come on our site and clear our trees, not without a real problem.
So let me back up. I understood that the ditch, creek, whatever you call it, is not on your property for the most part.
It appears that way.
So then there are trees on both sides of the ditch.
Mhm.
So half of the trees at least are not on your property and could come out. So it feels to me like
Well, but
we should have some more on the east side of that. And we have a buffer, but I don't know how many trees are actually in the buffer. You know, and the colored
vast
picture, it looks
majority,
nice.
let's take a look here. Yeah, so if you look at the exhibit, that's probably a better way to do it. You can see the vast majority of those trees are on the east side of that creek. Here, I have a bigger one here. I can. So it kind of meanders over here. And it's basically on the property, and we're talking a ditch this wide.
Yeah.
And so if it's just on the western side for a portion, if again, when you look
According to
at
the
it,
picture,
it's
it's out here.
right about here, and then it goes along,
Yep, and then it's outside again.
right? So again, if that is the ditch, you see, I would say all of those trees are on that side. You're not seeing the ditch here, and that's because the ditch is on the other side of the trees. This is trail view.
Yep.
So those trees, that canopy, that buffer is on the trail view site. Here's an even better one. Right? So that creek.
Looks like that's the creek there.
Right? So.
Yeah, when I've driven by, it's like, yeah, they're kind of right in the creek there, but
Well, right, so a tree is growing out and it's going to look like this, it's gonna be hard to see where that creek is. But I think you would see blueberries, creek, trees, trail view.
okay,
Property line is here, therefore none of those trees can come down. They should not be bringing down any of those trees.
is it, and I'm kind of asking as a general question and Mika involved also. And I can go take another look. I'd like a little more clarification on that situation. The trees are a big deal. in the township, we tried to make an ordinance to cover this kind of thing. We required a buffer. I feel like there should be more along that edge, some more planting of some kind. How much, I don't know. And that's always fuzzy. It's like we're also supposed to have, what do we call them, wildlife corridors. Wide enough that animals can go through and connect to other wooded areas and stuff. Whether all that is good ordinance or not, I don't know, but that's what it is. So I'm a little concerned with that.
So how many are you talking about
Right,
planting there?
that's the question.
Well,
I mean,
let us know. I
one
mean,
tree-
I think we can agree to it if you note it right now, it's maybe something that we can,
Yeah,
I mean, just understand there's a heavy canopy now, but if you feel like something more needs to go in there, what do you think it should be?
well, my first thing, just looking at whichever map it is, one map with the things, it's like, well, if we planted a couple trees per lot along 1 through 10, that would help. It would make more of a buffer, a separation. In the future, they'll be bigger. There's no houses there right now.
Can I just quick note something?
Yes, please.
One of the challenges we have with trees and buffers is keeping them alive, right? The township wants them planted early, rightfully so. But then they die and it's hard to get water to them. One thing we would be very open to would be, a requirement of homeowners to plant trees. It's not uncommon to see street trees as a requirement.
Right.
Would not be opposed to, creating some sort of a requirement to plant trees, which therefore they can get the variety they like. They have water source at that point that they can, keep them watered and alive versus we've seen this in lots of other communities, and I can point you to some 10-minute, 15-minute drive from here where planted them very early, half of them die. Now you're trying to get back there, remove the dead, plant new ones.
When you say early, you mean during the construction process?
Yeah, during the development process, I would say. Yep.
Yeah, and water shouldn't be a problem here. It's pretty high water table. So
if you plant a tree in the summer, that water table will not keep that tree alive for the first year.
and it's a little different. I mean, one of the reasons for the buffer is separation from neighbors. And at this point, your neighbors are blueberries, I think, or is it corn over there? I forget which.
Blueberries.
Hmm?
Blueberries.
It's blueberries. So we're not going to be disturbing anybody, but in the future, who knows? Right now, it's
Sure.
future zoned ag. So,
And there was some discussion at the last meeting that, about this tree line and at least we felt like what we heard towards the end of that meeting, or I should say the end of that discussion, was that, with the work that Ottawa County Parks is going to be doing with some restoration of the property that they're acquiring, along with all the trees that are being maintained on the current site, that no additional was needed, which is why, the plan doesn't reflect any additional, because we felt like that was, I shouldn't say the consensus, right? Because there was some, some differing views, but, I think to Chuck's point too, if there's something concise back from the planning commission, we certainly wouldn't let, a handful of trees hold up the process, but would maybe ask for a little bit of creativity on how do we achieve those trees and maybe the time frame of when to get those
well,
planted.
yeah, it doesn't make sense to put them in if they're going to die. That's just
We would agree, but
Yeah.
oftentimes that's what we've seen is because of the requirement, they have to be planted early, and then, at least half don't survive. So,
Mr. Chair, one of the reasons why that's typically required, not just in Park Township, but in most municipalities at the time of development, is because when somebody buys a house and there's no tree there, that's their expectation. Some people like them, some people don't. When you go to plant them after the fact, there's a better chance that they're never going to get in the ground. And we don't have the capacity to go around to knock on everybody's door and say, you didn't plant your tree yet. That just kind of creates some bad feelings. So it's a little bit of a balance to decide when, because it's true that when you're planting trees during the development phase, there is a greater likelihood that those trees are going to die. So that's just a choice.
Mr. Chair, from my perspective,
Otherwise, it doesn't get recorded. People listening to the recording can't hear it.
okay, close enough. Can you hear me now? All right. I think just confirmation that the majority of the trees for me personally is on the Trailview side of that ditch. I'm still comfortable with the buffer that's there. Overall, it is providing a buffer, in my opinion. It's also, it's a little scrubbier, but it's still similar. You know, obviously I appreciate the photos from when there were still leaves on all the trees rather than this time of year. I think, you know, it's still providing an overall buffer. It doesn't have to be completely solid. And I confirmation again that it is all, the majority are on the Trailview side. I'm still personally comfortable with what's there without additional. If there are sections where the majority of the trees happen to be on the other side, then it would be appropriate to add, in my opinion, maybe a few on the Trailview side. Depending, you know, because it does meander a little bit and it isn't quite that clear on the plan. But that's my 2 cents on that area.
Okay, thank you. Dennis?
I'm okay with it the way it is.
Okay,
I just asked that question for clarification, the map that you had with the pictures, lower left, circled in white, it says priority tree line. What does that mean?
Those are the ones we're supposed to be paying attention to.
because they're.
It's just calling your attention on that, you know, these are the trees that are sort of in question.
Pictures? Okay, and then.
I think why, if I may, is that there are lots and houses that far, and then when you get up to the tongue of trees that comes down, there aren't houses.
Right,
beyond that.
yeah.
Okay.
It sort of ends there, so don't pay attention to the ones to the north because.
All right, well, that's the ones that are more sparse that I'm seeing, so that makes total sense. Thank you for clarification.
So, yeah, I guess maybe to summarize it, maybe what we could do, that I think the applicant would be okay with is, if a certain number of trees is not, on the correct property line, on our property line, we'll say, you know, 2 trees per lot to be planted by, you know, at the time of the homeowner, coming in their installation. That way you can kind of be assured that they are maintained. We
As part of
understand
the sale to the homeowner.
as part of the sale to the homeowner. Yeah.
That's an interesting compromise.
Yeah.
And I'll quickly add as part of the master deed of these communities, landscaping plans are required to be submitted and approved. So they're
For each lot, is that what you're saying?
correct. Yep. So that's, you know, that's one, because I understand to Mika's point, you know, of the making sure it gets done and how easy is that to do, especially from the township's perspective. But that's one thing that the association does oversee and can oversee to be sure that those trees are being planted as part of their landscaping plan.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, and to that point, maybe this should be reviewed at the time of building permit application, right? So if the commission is comfortable putting it into the hands of planning staff, it could be, hey, if this is a spot, this particular lot number 5 is pretty sparse with their trees. I think we want to implement this 2 tree per lot because the staff person makes the determination that the trees are a little sparse in that area. I think that would be a good solution. So I think, you know, that could be a condition of approval saying if the planning staff determines that lot is sparse on trees, they're to add 2 more trees. I think that would be acceptable.
Okay, is that procedurally workable for you? Or is that something that would be forgotten and completely missed?
I'm thinking it through. It's not something that we've done before, so I'm thinking where that checkbox would be.
Yeah.
I don't mean to overstep, Chuck. That does get a little bit dicey just based on time of year, because if we're, you know, seeking certificate of occupancy in December, I would hate for, you know, staff to hold up that certificate of occupancy because the tree's not planted. But how else, again, back to Mika's original point, how do we regulate that or control that? So I would say it would probably have to be done on the HOA level, but again, not a difficult requirement to put in that landscape approval process specifically for those lots. And yeah, we could make them for the whole section. We don't have to isolate trees. But
yeah, and one thing that we've done in the past is that I would go out ahead of time and look and say, okay, what do we need to do here? I think we've done that in another parcel. It was different because it wasn't a specific development. So I think staff can go out and identify locations where additional trees might be needed. the trick, I don't think it would be something that would be workable necessarily at the time of building permit issuance, because we wouldn't hold up a certificate of occupancy for it. But then that gets into, we actually had a piece this spring where somebody was building out about having to plant a tree they didn't want, because I think it changed hands and their builder didn't tell them and they didn't want that tree, but it was a sweet tree, so. That was a good conversation.
Okay. Well, where I am is, when we're finishing the preliminary today and coming back for a final next time. So I would like to see something about the trees. If you guys can figure out something that seems reasonable, that we have at least some notes that that was the plan. If we can, I don't know, maybe we can't get clarity, but the lot line, I'd like to know if we can do anything more with that. And then the other thing was the master, in the master deed, having that thing about maintaining the trees along James Street, make sure that's in the master deed. Other than that, these are,
You're questioning, he's talking about Long James Street lots 1 and 20.
Mhm.
That buffer that you put in there to be maintained by,
the HOA.
yeah. HOA or owner of the property itself. I don't know what you would.
HOA, it was
Okay.
requested.
It has to
HOA.
be the HOA.
Perfect.
And Mika, there are a bunch of bullet points here, which would be part of a motion. Do we need a motion to move this on to final? I don't think
No,
so.
we don't need a motion, so this would be my proposed path forward, is that I hope I got them all in the bullet points at the end. There are a couple things that are bold as well.
Well, those were tree related, as I recall.
Yeah, we've got the stormwater drainage management. I think all of those things went to the bullet points, but I'll double check. If you're comfortable with all of that, so our PUD approval process requires a resolution to go to the township board. And so what I would do is work together with the township attorney to bring that resolution to you at the next meeting that would contain all of this information.
Okay,
And then you could approve it and forward it to the township board. Now, something the applicant alluded to is that this process has kind of gone on for a period of time.
it has.
I think we're all ready to kind of say, okay, good, you're done.
Yep.
I've got my little spreadsheet up here that has all of the, this is my little flow chart. It has all the meetings and the notice dates and how they overlap. So the
Okay.
notice date, in order to get stuff to the township board, it's already too late for the March meeting, you're kind of regardless, but, so you've got your March meeting of the planning commission. In order for that to appear on the township board meeting, that's immediately following those notices, that notice date would be before the planning commission meeting. And so my question to you, my proposal would be that I notice that prior to the meeting, so they're able to go to the township board immediately following the next planning commission meeting. If there are any tweaks to this resolution, that's not a problem to make tweaks. If you are comfortable enough with where this stands right now, that I would be able to notice this prior to the next planning commission meeting. I'd just like to hear from you if that's a thumbs up or if it's like wait. If I notice it and it comes back and goes, wow, all of a sudden I hate everything about this and we need to start from scratch. You can do that. But that would be my.
Okay.
I mean,
I'm comfortable with
Yeah.
staff's presentation.
Same thing, yeah.
Yeah, I love this development. Just might not feel that way, but
I actually had these maps across my desk across my layout tables at work. We've got large drafting tables and, man, if I was in the neighborhood of, buying a house, I'm not going to. I'm like, I might like living in here.
there are no short-term rentals in this development yet.
I'm gonna keep my mouth shut.
Yeah, I'm comfortable and I think noticing it before the next meeting makes sense. I would expect this to go through.
No, thanks for putting up with my questions.
Well, and I, once again, I've been involved in multiple PUDs over the years. And this is the best one we've ever had as far as getting something back to the community in exchange. It, by far, no comparison.
Thank you.
I'm very happy about it.
So procedurally, just so I understand, there would be an expectation that we would come back to the planning commission for final,
Yes.
right? Is there an application for
There's
that?
an application for that. So
Okay,
I think the date.
so that would be at,
That would be on March 27th.
that would be the March 27 meeting, not a public hearing, and the board meeting would be the public
It
hearing.
is a public hearing.
Okay,
Then the board. That's April. I'm reading my chart right.
It's the 10th.
Thank you.
and so the application that was submitted previously, that was not the final application, that was the preliminary? Okay.
So all set. Thank you. And thank you for your patience. Oh, I was going to add that the vice chair came down sick today, so he couldn't be here, but we'd had a previous discussion and his only concerns were with tree buffers. Just so you know.
Not the only one.
Yeah, just, I mean, there are multiple people here with that concern, so. Cool, thank you. Anything else on this one, or we'll move to the next item if I can find the agenda. There it is. All right. Other business and announcements. I hope you keep showing up for meetings because we're getting a little scarce here. Mika, anything?
ZBA is looking at short-term rentals. They received the 600-page application. And we're reviewing it. I've touched base with a couple of ZBA members. Much fun staying at, I think. So the expectation is that on Monday, they would set a date for that public hearing. It's likely that there will be more than one meeting on that in order to allow ample time for public comment. It'll probably be a different location as well. So staff is spending most of our time right now preparing for that and some other issues. Also, Lorna. This is her first planning commission meeting. Lorna has been with us for 1 week and 1 day. We're very happy to have her. She's the planning and zoning assistant, so she'll be supporting these meetings initially as minutes taker. That will probably be her role at planning commission for some time, but we'll see as time goes on how that goes. So very pleased to welcome.
So is this as much fun as you thought? Okay,
Yeah.
good. Glad to hear it. Anything from the board?
Yeah, I prepared a sheet of paper so I didn't forget anything. We had a public hearing on the Parks and Rec 5-year master plan. There was no public input for or against it, so the board approved it as presented. Other items the board also approved were a liquor license for the application for the Celtic Festival. So they'll be having a beer tent there. And then we also approved the Parks and Rec Director job description and amended the original to also include grant writing. So that solicitation for that opening will go out at some point, and it may already be out. I'm not positive. There was a brief federal funding update in that there is no update. So I'm certain that you've been listening in the news of all the budget cuts and this getting canceled and that getting canceled. We do not know how it will affect our DNR grants that we received almost $1 million of. So we don't know if we'll still be making improvements to Windstrom, and that's what one of the grants was for, and the other grant was for our community park. Both of those are in limbo right now. So no update. There was a brief talk on lifeguard support at the Holland State Park and generalizations made about a pilot project proposal. And it even made the Detroit Free Press a little blurb about potentially in Park Township. But currently there is no program. There's no plan to go forward with that. Just to kill that in the bud right now. Road Commission has proposed to Park Township an alternative traffic flow pattern on Ottawa Beach Road. and it would run between 144th and 160th. They're still assessing that, more to come. It's not a road diet, but it is switching lanes. They're proposing 2 lanes going
East.
2 lanes going east, a 1 center or a turn lane, and then 1 lane on the opposite side. So they would be just repainting stripes. I don't know how I feel about that yet. Like I said, more to come. And then also, Mr. Spoolhoff proposed to the board and got unanimous agreement on pausing the RFQ process for the community center based on funding. Don't know what's happening with a lot of things in our environment and government right now, that we will pause it for at least a year and talk about it at future strategic planning sessions. But we will not be moving forward with anything in 2025.
And I don't know if you know they finally settled on the insurance for the old community building.
I didn't write that down.
4 point something million.
4.7 million.
And the proposed new community building was 20 million-ish. That's a fairly big gap to fill in.
Yeah.
So, anything, just that you're having fun with?
Yeah, we had a short public meeting and we did approve a 10-foot setback unanimously. There was no issue there. And I'm not going to comment on where the ZBA is on the petition from the petitioners.
Yeah, we've spent a fair amount of time on that before, so.
Yes.
Okay, anything?
Nope,
You're welcome back from maternity leave.
Yes,
thank you.
happy to have you here. All right, then a motion to adjourn, please.
I move to adjourn.
Support?
All in favor?
I,
Done. Thank you all.
that's always the